Today on the show, I'm excited to have Katie calling from Georgia. Hi, Katie.
Hello.
It's
How's
good
it
to
going?
have you.
Thank you.
Okay,
Happy to be
tell
here.
tell me how you and I got connected.
So essentially I follow you on Instagram. And I saw an Instagram story about questions, and I had just recently been through a breakup, and I was like, I actually have a question. So I filled out the form, and that's
And
how
here you
I
are.
here I am.
See,
Yep.
the gram does have benefits, doesn't
It
it?
does. Yes, it does.
Well, I'm so glad we were able to connect. Okay, so what is it that you want to talk to me about today?
Um, so essentially my question is like considering it was a long-term relationship, how do you not second guess the decision that you made to end the relationship when you feel like you lost your best friend, but you know it's the right decision or it was the right decision, but
Yeah.
continuing to second guess it in some way, shape, or form
Okay, so you were in a relationship. How long were you in a relationship for?
for a year.
A year. Okay.
Yes.
So talk me through, before we talk about second guessing, talk me through what was it about the relationship that made you decide this wasn't the right fit?
Um, there there was a few months back there was like certain things that I felt like was missing in the relationship, whether it was a personality factor or it was also I really felt like we lacked a lot of like good, deeper conversation and more specifically like spiritual conversation. Um, and I had multiple like times where I talked to him about it and kind of expressed like that was a concern of mine that I felt like the relationship was like very stagnant because we weren't getting to know getting onto a deeper level. It was still very much surface level. Um, and so it didn't really like change very much
Mhm.
over the course of time, I guess. And so I felt like I had had communicated enough of what I felt like was missing, that I felt like was really important, for like a long term, very long term, like a marriage.
Yeah.
And I just felt like that was something that never changed. And I wasn't somebody who was going to give like an ultimatum of like, if you don't change, because I felt like that based on like counsel I received from like people that I have close to,
Mhm.
that it maybe wasn't wise to do that.
So when you say ultimatum, you mean like if you don't change, we're breaking up?
Um, yes, essentially.
Okay.
Um, I felt like he needed to want to take the initiative to want to have a deeper like connection and have those deeper conversations. Um,
Yeah.
and
So
it
you
not
shared it at least originally, and
mhm,
maybe even more than once, just to make your needs known. But you're saying you weren't going to keep pressing and say, listen, if this doesn't change, we're
right.
done. But you were going to just leave it, let him know, then you were going to let it go and see what happened. And then if things didn't change, then you ultimately decided this isn't going anywhere. It's not changing. So I don't believe this is the best match for me.
Yes. That's a good synopsis, I guess.
Yeah. So it sounds to me like the emotional and spiritual connection wasn't quite where it needed to be.
Right. Yes. I felt like after the amount of time that we had spent together, I it just did not seem like we had made any progress.
Yeah.
Um and um Like I felt like I knew just as much about him and he knew just about as much about me, like as we did 3 months into dating.
Right.
There wasn't any like initiative to try like there wasn't any initiative like anytime I would bring up like a deeper conversation question, it would normally like it was it was answered, but a lot of the time we would it would like immediately move to a different subject pretty quickly.
A lot of
Um
avoidance.
yes. Yeah.
But as far as it was up to you, you did take initiative and you did try to have meaningful, deeper conversations. It just felt like it was avoided each time you brought it up or kind
Right.
of redirected to a different conversational topic.
Yeah, so like if I brought even something up that was like future related, most of the time the answer was like, well, I like focusing on the present. Like that was normally the answer. Not there was really no continuation like of like talking about like, oh, well, it could maybe look like this, or it was always presented of oh well, I don't try to think about it too much. And it was kind of like me like my way of like probing like, oh, like do you like I never specifically specifically asked like do you specifically see yourself being married to me? But I definitely like probed some questions that could present that like as a part of the conversation. It would kind of almost go the different direction every time.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah.
Okay. So you eventually made the decision to end the relationship, and now
Yes.
you're struggling a little bit with second guessing. What are some of the thoughts that are coming up that are causing you to second guess? Like, what does that sound like in your mind?
Um, I think it's a lot to do with like the companionship portion. Sorry.
Okay.
Um, because you spend like so much time together and like I'm kind of a talker, so I would kind of share like things going on in my life, things going on in my job, um and he was like super supportive of that. Um, so that's probably the part where I like second guess the most is the that portion. Just the yeah, more so than anything else is that, and I like can constantly like have to remind myself of the specific reasons as to why I ended the relationship and try not to um I tried to like remind myself I couldn't go based on like the potential of and the like thought of like oh what this could be if this was different.
Right.
But I still find it pretty difficult to get past the because we were very good friends.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the loneliness, the lack of companionship, the the lack of having someone to just be present with you, the withness of a
Yeah.
relationship. And so part of you is like, well, is it better to have someone than no one at all?
Right.
And should I have just stuck with it and settled for a relationship that wasn't exactly what I needed, but it's better than nothing. It's better than not having anyone. Maybe it wasn't that bad after all. And then your mind just kind of starts going,
Yeah. Yes, pretty much. And then you go back to like, well, there was certain things about him and things that he did that were really positive, and
right?
you go back to that specifically and you're like, okay, well, is I had all these things like with the relationship. Um, and so you I just consistently go back to that when I like second guess myself.
Right.
Um, and so like that's the hard part.
Yeah.
Um, because that's the easy part to think about.
Right. Right.
And versus trying to be more logical and try to remind myself that uh, there was specific reasons that
Right.
I did end it. Yeah.
Your journey, I already know, can resonate with so many people. There's so many people listening right now who are second guessing a breakup, are
Yeah.
wondering if they made the right choice, are tempted to go back to something that wasn't good or right or was lacking in an
Mhm.
area. And this is why I think it's really important, number one, for us to conceptualize greens from yellows from reds. I have a book called True Love Dates about becoming healthy as a single and attracting healthy relationships. And in one of the sections, I talk about the importance of having a yellow, green, red list of the qualities that you're looking for in somebody that you want to marry, and writing out the reds, the greens, and the yellows. And so the reds are the things that are deal breakers. Like, I could not live with this if it did
Right.
not change. This is not my ideal picture of a healthy relationship. The yellows are the things that are preferences. There may be unknowns. Like, we'll see how this plays out. I'm not totally sure about it.
Yeah.
Um, Preferences. And then the greens are the must haves. Like, these are the things that are really important to me in a relationship, and I will not settle for anything less than this. And so, writing it out is really important to kind of look at the list, because if there's anything in the red column, the relationship must stop. Red means stop. It's not about potential, it's about what I have in the present. Can I
Right.
do this for life if this is all it is? If this is
Yeah.
what it is exactly today, is what it's going to be in 10 years, could I live with this? And that's why reds are really important, because it's like red means stop. Like, this isn't changing, you know? The yellow category is okay, if these things don't change, could I live with this? And most of the time, the things in the yellow category, you could say, okay, I could live with this. But sometimes when there's too many yellows, they add up to a red. Like, if there's just so many preferences that aren't how I want them to be, what I
Right.
need, what I prefer, it could tip into the red zone. And then you're like back to square one of red means stop. And then the greens, of course, are the things that you do know that you need. And so I think it's important
Right.
for anybody who's struggling with this type of decision to really write this out and to have their list front and center. This is what was in the red zone. This was what was in the yellow zone, because otherwise, those get forgotten.
Yeah.
And then you just focus on the greens without
Right.
really taking the weight of the red zone and the yellow zone. I think there's perfectly healthy relationships with a whole lot of greens and a few yellows. The problem is when it's a whole lot of yellows or yellows and reds. It's like that's
Right.
when you really need to stop and consider, could I do this for life? Is this fulfilling for life? Is this what I'm looking for in a partner, a long-term partner? And when people struggle with loneliness, I think that's when we're most susceptible to making those compromises in our head, of, well, maybe this
Yeah.
or that. But I do think, rather than ignoring the loneliness that you're feeling, you need to see it as a signal that you were made to connect, and maybe to see loneliness as your body's way of encouraging you to increase connections in healthy relationships. So rather than just be sad about the void,
Right.
see the void as your body signaling, yeah, you do have to fill this void. You just have to fill it in healthy ways. So maybe that means increased connections for this season with family, with friends, with church community in ways that maybe you didn't need before. Maybe
Hmm.
this season you need to increase those connections to fill that void in healthy ways. Otherwise, the void gets filled with your mental gymnastics of, well, maybe I shouldn't have. Maybe I overlooked this. Maybe I could have overlooked that. Maybe I made too big of a deal out of this. I mean, usually when you break up with somebody, there's things in the yellow and the red that weren't changing,
Right.
as was in your case.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that is exactly kind of what happened. Like there was a couple things I read and just probably too many things that kind of fell into the yellow category.
Yeah.
Um, and so that's why I said like I know it was the right decision. Um, but I guess I I didn't expect I knew it was the right decision, but I wasn't expecting it to be as difficult knowing it was the right decision.
Well, think of it this way. When you have been consuming mediocre food, okay?
Yeah.
Not that nutritious. You're not eating cotton candy all day, okay? It's just
Right.
mediocre food, but it's filling your appetite and that's kind of your routine each day.
Mhm.
And then you decide this isn't good for me, so I'm going to take this out of my life. But then you're surprised when the appetite comes. It's like, wait, why am I so hungry? And why am I even craving some of this mediocre food? It's because when you take something out of your life, even something that's mediocre, it's not that bad, but it's not that good.
Right.
You've got to replace it with something healthy. Otherwise, it'll get replaced with mediocre again or something unhealthy. I'm
Yeah.
not surprised that the appetite for relationship exists. You were made for it. And not only that, when you've had a higher dose to fill that appetite
Mhm.
with that daily consistent relationship, that daily consistent presence, when it's not there anymore, it's going to feel a whole lot worse because your body has
Yeah.
gotten accustomed to that type of interaction. Your appetite for community and connection has increased in the context of relationship. So when the relationship leaves your life, your appetite's like, wait a second, wait a second. I'm used to eating 3 meals a day. What's going on? And so you have to fill that back in intentionally with healthy things. Otherwise, the void takes over, the appetite takes over, the hunger takes over. And what happens if you just ignore that hunger and push through? You will eventually default to unhealthy things, convenient things. What's the closest thing I can eat right now? Your appetite is going to go to what's most convenient rather than what's healthy. And
Makes
sometimes
sense.
what's most convenient is just going back to that old relationship or starting a new relationship that's not much better, but easy, or
Yeah.
something that's unhealthy. So the intentionality now comes in filling my life with healthy things. I can't ignore this appetite, shame this appetite, repress this appetite. But I do have to figure out ways to be intentional to fill this appetite in healthy ways in this season of life. And I think people are really good at the breakup part, but not so good at filling in the gaps with an alternative. We were made for relationships. You're supposed to feel a void when a close relationship exits your life, no matter who it is, even if it's a friendship.
Right.
But then what? You were meant to fill that void in healthy ways. And most likely it's not going to be through the context of one person, but through many. So, this is a great season to kind of zoom in on meaningful relationships in your life with God and with others, and be really intentional about filling your life for this season. It may not look like this forever, but you have a higher need right now because you just got out of a relationship. And I think you should honor that appetite in a healthy way.
That makes sense. That definitely makes sense. I could, I definitely have tried over a bit like more and been a little bit more intentional the last few weeks. And it definitely has helped. Um, there's like moments of where like you continue to do that, but the moments have become less frequent, I would
Yeah.
say. Yeah.
And instead of seeing those moments of sadness or grief as a deficit, there's nothing wrong with you. It's just your body's way of reminding you that you were made to connect, and that's okay.
Yeah.
And to
Yeah.
be intentional in the ways that you can and continue to remember, like you said, the reds and the
Mhm.
yellows and the reality that you are praying for a relationship that is healthy in the present, not one that has the potential for healthy in the future.
Right. Yeah.
But I think you're on the right track. And it's just starting to reframe that void, that appetite when it comes up. Of course, I'm hungry for relationships. So, how can I fill this appetite in a healthy way? Otherwise, I'm going to sit here and give my mind space to wander
Yeah.
and think and second guess and bring myself back to familiar over healthy.
Right.
But I'm
Yeah.
proud of you. I'm proud of you for taking those steps because spiritual connection and spiritual intimacy and spiritual maturity in a relationship is so important. When you are joining your lives with someone, you want them to be on the same page as you in their love for God, in their faith, in their relationship with Jesus, and their ability to connect with you on deeper levels,
Right.
emotionally and spiritually, is a huge part
Yeah,
in
exactly.
a healthy relationship.
I agree.
Well, thank you so much for sharing. I hope that gave you a little bit of clarity and
It's good. Yeah.
affirmation.
No, I appreciate it. It did. It was
Yeah.
helpful.
Well, thank you, Katie. It was so nice to meet you.
It was nice to meet you as well.
Take care.
All right. Have a good
Bye
one.
bye.
Bye bye.